And welcome to another edition of Krown Gridiron Nation, everyone. Mike is in Toronto. Gord is in suburban Vancouver. I'm here on Football Island. I will not bring you the 2-minute offense. We will bring you a list of every bowl game involving Canadian content, and we will also roll out to you the winner of the 2022 John Cornish Trophy. But before that, let's get back into bowl mode, and we'll let Mike kick things off.
It's Boise State, it's North Texas, it's the Frisco Bowl. And we'll start with a kid from Hamilton. He's a linebacker. We talked about him on the show a couple of weeks ago because he was getting some time on special teams. And that's Jalen Smith from Hamilton, a linebacker, 6 feet tall, 200, 15 tackles this season, a couple of TFLs as well. So he hasn't started a game all season, but you could see him on the field in a special teams capacity, or maybe getting some play at linebacker. Boise State, maybe the most interesting story from a Canadian perspective, certainly, is Isaiah Banya, an edge player, played at Lethbridge. He's a redshirt junior. 6 games, he has a sack, but he didn't dress in the conference championship and has entered the transfer portal. So that's a guy that we can be watching in the offseason to see where he ends up. Boise State favorite in this game. That makes our head coach Ryan Dinwiddie very happy, as he was a quarterback back in the day with the Broncos.
Well, it's that event everyone's been waiting for all year long. It's the second annual Jimmy Kimmel's LA Bowl. And this is a Pac-12 versus Mountain West matchup every year. This year, that matchup, Washington State and Fresno State. And there are some Canadian connections on both sides. Henry Kimmins is a defensive back at Washington State, a rotational guy on defense. He was born in Canada, though he is American in citizenship as well. And then, of course, on the other side, Dante Bull, likely ticketed for the CFL, I would think, though he may sneak his way into the NFL as an offensive tackle prospect after his final year here. With Fresno State, they started out of the gate really slow this year and kind of got forgotten about, went 1-4 out of the gate, but they turned it around and went on a hot streak, taking them all the way to the Mountain West title after beating Boise State in the championship game last week. It's been a great turnaround, and the guy to pay attention to for Fresno State is the quarterback, Jake Hayner, a guy that burst onto the scene about 15 months ago when he took down UCLA at the Rose Bowl. He, again, like the rest of the team, started slow this year, but after deciding to not follow his coach to Washington, came back and had an outstanding year for the Bulldogs on the whole. On the other side, for Washington State, their quarterback is a really interesting prospect as well. Cameron Ward is his name. Transferred up from Incarnate Word after the last season, where he ripped it up to the FCS level. Had a good, though not exceptional, first year at the FBS level. He can really sling it around the yard, so I expect a lot of offensive fireworks in this one.
And off to Myrtle Beach we go. Conway, South Carolina, if we want to get specific. It's the Myrtle Beach Bowl, and it's Marshall versus Yukon. There's no Canadian content on the Thundering Herd, but interestingly, there's a handful on Yukon, and it's not because Jim Mora Jr. went and recruited them. He is their first-year head coach. Yes, that Jim Mora Jr., the former Seahawks and Falcons head coach. There are a couple of players here with Canadian roots, so with a chance of making an impact in this game. Malcolm Bell's been a really interesting story. A 6'2" DB. He's received quite a bit of playing time for a redshirt freshman. 35 tackles this year. He's a product of the Football North program at Clarkson in Mississauga. And Kevin Clercius is the starting receiver. He's got speed, 12 catches for 288 yards and a touchdown. When he does catch the ball, something happens. But as mentioned, Marshall is the favorite in this game.
And we head down to the Bayou for the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, one of the longest running bowl games outside of the big names like the Rose Bowl. This game has been going for over 50 years, and it usually promises great finishes. That seems to be the hallmark for this bowl game. It's in a nice domed environment, and it's usually with a couple of these mid-major conferences where the points come easily. And that should be the case again this year. Western Kentucky comes in with a high-flying offensive attack as usual, and they come in to take on South Alabama. South Alabama very quietly has had an excellent season. 9-win season is a high water mark for that program in FBS thus far. And Brandon Bridges' alma mater also boasts a couple of Canadians on the back end of the roster. You're not likely to see Caleb Schlachter on the field in this game from Kelowna, BC, but you may see Trammell States-Jones, who has had a handful of snaps on defense as a freshman. out of Surrey, BC. So that will be an interesting guy to keep a look for in terms of Canadian content. But for the product on the fields, Western Kentucky, that classic like spread, not quite air raid, but spread style system. They throw the ball a lot. South Alabama on the other side, they've had an excellent passing attack too. They also came into the Rose Bowl this year, played UCLA strong, have had a really good year that way too. So should be a close, tight game and a great finish.
Coming up, more Bowl-orama. Welcome back, everyone. I don't know how this happens, but Mike gets to kick off in both halves. So away you go, Mike, as we get back into bowl mode.
It's the Pinstripe Bowl at Syracuse, Minnesota. I like this one for the history, and you know me, Jim. I love the history of the sport, and it's not the same Yankee Stadium, obviously, but they go back to a building where Army Navy played, where it was Fordham against New York University, and the New York Football Giants. So there's a lot of heritage going back to a building that we think about as being baseball only. And it's a pretty good game, and some Canadians to watch for as well. And the big one is one of our honorable mention guys for the Cornish, and Matt Bergeron, big man, offensive lineman, second team All ACC, and he's a really highly touted NFL draft prospect. Second, third round is where most of the people have him going. Honorable mention for the Cornish, as I mentioned. The other guy is Damian Alford, who we've talked about quite a bit on this show as well this year. 6'6" wideout. He's got speed. He's got hands. We all think he's underutilized by the Orange. 17 catches, 372 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. Had 4 for 83 in his last game against Boston College. Minnesota, more or less guys who are going to be down the road. Tyrell Lawrence is a kid from the Clearwater Academy out of Milton, Ontario, and Raylan Kelly is a cornerback, again from the football powerhouse of Winnipeg. He also went down to Clearwater Academy. So the Golden Gophers are favored in this game, but I just can't wait to see them play at Yankee Stadium.
Another one of the longest running second-tier bowls is the Sun Bowl in the Texas town of El Paso, and it is Pitt and UCLA this year. And so there should be a really interesting matchup, an offensive-minded matchup. And so for us, the guy that we want to focus on is Jared Wayne. Wayne's really hit his stride in recent weeks, including a 3-touchdown performance in the last game of the regular season for Pitt. His quarterback situation has settled a little bit, though Keaton Slovis, the presumed starter, has put his name back into the transfer portal at this point. So he is probably not likely to take part in this game. On the flip side, UCLA, all of their guys that may potentially be declaring are already practicing for the game at this point in time. So we are not aware of any major opt-outs, which means you'll see a full-strength UCLA squad that was right there with the top of the Pac-12 conference. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson in his likely last college football game, Zach Charbonnet in his likely last college football game will both be playing and leading a rushing attack that was one of the top 5 in the country this year in total yards. That's going to be the biggest challenge for Pitt, is holding that rushing attack in check, because Chip Kelly's teams are just the way Chip Kelly's teams always are. They can put up points almost at will, it seems, but their defense can also give them up at will. So expect fireworks in this one.
It's Penn State and Utah in the Rose Bowl. That's just got a kind of a neat sound to it. And, maybe the story that we've been talking about the most in the last couple of weeks on this side of the border has been about a guy who's not going to be at Penn State anymore. And it's Christian Bayou, who said that he's going to be entering the transfer portal. So it looks like he's going the way of Michael O'Connor, a Canadian quarterback who goes to Penn State, and very early in his career as a Nittany Lion said, I'm going to go to another program. They do have some players to watch, though. Theo Johnson from Windsor, Ontario, tight end. He's a sophomore. He really became more of a factor in the Nittany Lions offense as the season progressed, had some multi-touchdown games. So he's a guy that could end up playing pro. So you want to keep an eye on him. The other one is Malik Mega. He's a receiver. He doesn't get the same kind of targets that Johnson does. You may remember him from last year. He scored a touchdown where he couldn't have been more open. Kind of comical in retrospect, but those are a couple of guys to watch on the Nittany Lions, and Utah is the favorite in the granddaddy of them all.
We head over to the recently renamed ReliQuest Bowl, and you don't need to remember that, but you do need to remember that this is likely the last college football game for both Sydney and Chase Brown as Illinois takes on Mississippi State. And for Illinois, they had a couple strong performances to end the year. They blew out Northwestern. They took Michigan down to the wire, but they get kind of relegated to one of these second-tier bowl games. This game formerly known as the Outback Bowl. And Chase and Sydney are looking to finish on top. Sydney had the best game of his college football career against Northwestern. Chase himself had a lengthy touchdown over 100 yards from scrimmage, as he seems to pump out every single week. They'll look to keep that going against Mississippi State. For Mississippi State, the guy to watch out for is the SEC all-time completions leader, Will Rogers, at starting quarterback. This is a Mike Leach team, which means they run the air raid. It means they throw the ball all over the yard about 50 to 60 times a game, so Rogers will be slinging it. And it'll be interesting to see how that style matches up against the classic ground and pound Big Ten style of play that Illinois employs.
Well, it is the Peach Bowl, and why would you not want Georgia in the Peach Bowl? They do. They've also got Ohio State, and does this look like a good game? I know that one of the biggest questions I had in college football this year is at the beginning of the season. How is Georgia going to recover from losing so many players and key players and star players and great players to high draft picks in the NFL? And how do they respond? 13-0, not bad. That was a legitimate question, and they've answered them all. Stetson Bennett is there. He's not the biggest quarterback in the world, and he is a Heisman finalist, although there are a lot of people who are going, why is he a Heisman finalist? But this team is predicated on defense. Defense. They are great. Only Illinois allowed fewer points per game than the Bulldogs. They are just fantastic on that side of the ball, which sets up the chess match with Ohio State's offense led by C.J. Stroud, who again is a Heisman Trophy. I don't know if he's the favorite, but he's going to be a high NFL pick. He might be the first overall pick in the NFL draft. So you get two really prestigious programs, two teams playing exceptionally well. This is what you want in the Peach Bowl.
We head to the first of the semifinals in the college football playoff, and it is the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. It's number 3 TCU taking on number 2 Michigan. TCU came out of nowhere and in the top 4 to make the college football playoff. They've got Lual Ugwak on the roster, who attempted to make the jump all the way from the UConn level of play up to TCU's level of play, and has had some mixed results. He hasn't been able to make a large impact, though you will likely see him take some snaps for the Horned Frogs on defense. For them, the story is about 2 guys. It is Max Duggan, the Heisman Trophy runner-up at quarterback, and it is Quentin Johnson, another surefire first-round pick as a receiver. Johnson in particular is a sight to behold. A big 6'4", 6'5" frame, has great movement skills, can beat you over the top, can beat you in the mid-range game. He's a really impressive weapon. And so those 2 guys will need to drive the attack for a team that probably is still considered an underdog in this game. Michigan on the other side looked like a juggernaut for most of the season, and then Blake Corum, the engine that drove their offense, got hurt in the game against Illinois about 4 weeks ago. After that, though, they played Ohio State, they played in the championship game, and both times they were able to get through. J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback, takes over in the Ohio State game and gets the job done, and then in the Big Ten championship game, Donovan Edwards takes over on the ground, picks up the mantle, and they continue on rolling. So, what can stop Michigan at this point in time? It's a good question. They look like they're destined for the national semifinal. It'll be interesting to see if TCU can hang with them and pull off what a lot would consider to be an upset here.
Coming up, we award the Cornish Trophy for the top Canadian in the NCAA. Welcome back, everyone. This is my favorite time of the year where we get to hand out the Cornish Trophy. It's the 6th edition, and here are our 5 finalists. Illinois junior running back Chase Brown from London, Ontario. He was durable, reliable, and productive in 2022. 1,643 rushing yards. He was second in the NCAA, and it was his second consecutive 1,000-yard season. Thoroughly productive and consistent in his 5 years with the Fighting Illini, London, Ontario super senior Sidney Brown turned in his best year in the Illinois secondary, getting the attention of NFL scouts with his 6 picks and stats in just about every defensive category. A Cornish Trophy would be the crowning glory for one of Canada's best ever college defensive backs. The former Guelph Griffin who transferred during the pandemic, senior D lineman Tavius Robinson, has been a force to be reckoned with at Ole Miss in 2022, always capable of making a game-changing play in the interior of the line. The MAC Player of the Year in 2022 was Ohio junior quarterback Curtis Rourke of Oakville, Ontario. He was 5th in the nation in passing until sustaining a knee injury in Ohio's second-to-last game, finishing with 3,256 yards passing, good for 20th in the NCAA. Peterborough, Ontario senior Jared Wayne was the top target of Pitt this year, another top Canadian who did lose some playing time due to injury. Wayne rallied towards season's end, eclipsing the 1,000-yard mark. And the winner of the Cornish Trophy in 2022 is Chase Brown, junior running back from London, Ontario, and the Illinois Fighting Illini. Chase, congratulations on being awarded the Cornish Trophy, recognizing the top Canadian NCAA football. Before we get to your outstanding season, the best thing about an award is being able to share it. Who do you want to share this with?
Well, I think that's an easy question for me. Sharing with my brother, my teammates, everybody that came along with this journey to get me to the position I am right now.
Your brother Sidney was on the Cornish Honor Roll as well, an athlete through his last 5 years who could be arguably placed as the top Canadian as a defensive back in NCAA history. How important was it for you to have him on your journey at Illinois, but also through life as well?
It's been a journey with him. That's my day one guy, and it's been an unbelievable opportunity to share this season, the experiences we went through together, and to leave college with a degree with my brother. I mean, it's gonna be something I'm forever grateful for. He showed exactly what he needed to be considered one of the best DBs in the NCAA from Canada. But overall, he's an extremely hard worker. He's a talented player, and he's only going to keep taking steps forward.
Last year, you had some explosive games, days well past 200 yards. This year, though, you were more consistent, 10 100-yard games in a row. What a string. What was vital in establishing your consistency?
Yeah, and that was just preparing the same way each and every week. I went in with the same mentality. I was looking for ways I could exploit defenses, and when game day came, I did just that. So, it was just, and then along with that, with my recovery and just making sure that I was at 100% for game day.
Coming into this year, did you anticipate getting so many touches? 328 is a lot of them. How did that test your durability?
Yeah, didn't expect to get 328 carries, but I knew I was going to have a heavy workload after McRae went down earlier on in the season. So, I was ready for whatever. The way I prepped my body, the way I worked preseason is what set me up for the season and postseason. So,
you still have another year of eligibility left if you want to play at Illinois. I'm not going to ask about declaring for the NFL draft, but I do want to know what would go into the process of evaluating where you're going to play in 2023.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, the NFL has been a dream of mine since I was a kid, since I started playing football, and I'm grateful that I'm in a position where the NFL is an option. But coming back to Illinois would not hurt me. It would be another year of preparation, another year to be ready for the NFL. So we'll see where this goes.
Before we let you go, I want to know what your message is to the football community in Canada and the football community in London, Ontario.
Chase your dreams, no matter how big or unusual they sound. When I was making the push for just to play college, but let alone said I want to play in the NFL, people would look at me sideways. So make the most opportunity, chase your dreams, and never give up.
Once again, Chase, thank you for representing Canada and winning the Cornish Trophy in 2022. And pass along our best regards to your brother Sidney for his outstanding career at Illinois.
Of course, this is a blessing. Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, closing thoughts on 2022. Welcome back. Last round, closing thoughts on this season. I'll give both you guys a shot at it. First to you, Gord.
It's been an interesting year on both sides of the border for football. U Sports continues its long march back from losing a season and the fallout from that. It feels like it's maybe not all the way back, but it does feel like it's inching closer, and the quality of play is inching higher all the time. I feel like there's a little bit more competition at the top than there was last year, and hopefully we can continue inching in that direction, because the challenge with juggernaut programs is that it's boring when it's the same programs over and over again at the top, although I'm sure they would beg to differ. On the other side, in the NCAA, it was a bit of a transitional year for us. You know, some of the offensive stars that we've been talking about for the last number of years, we've been really spoiled with the likes of Mechie, Hubbard, Rourke, Claypool. And what was great to see this season for us is that we had a couple new guys pop up and give us a lot of things to talk about. We had Chase Brown emerge as a big-time offensive weapon, though I should point out he was pretty good last year as well. You know, we had Curtis Rourke emerge as a big-time offensive weapon from being a part-time starter the year before. And so those big strides forward from those two guys in particular made the season a lot more interesting to talk about, even if some of the guys that we were hoping would make an impact, like Nick Mardner, for example, like Jared Wayne, even with some of his injuries, weren't necessarily at the forefront of people's minds the way that we had hoped. So going forward, the question becomes, with the cycle changing so quickly in the NCAA this year, with guys leaving college football sooner than ever, how many of these names are going to change over, and who's going to be there to pick up the torch when they do? And that'll be the most interesting storyline for me.
Well, if we want to start with youth sports, you know, if there was a negative, it was the return of predictability, and that was sad. You know, and it's no disrespect to the teams at the top of the conferences, because they're exceptional teams. You know, this is the Ontario-centric version because this is where I am. What was disappointing this year is there was so much distance between Western and everybody else, and that's not a knock on everybody else, but Western just pulled ahead of everybody. And you know, there were so many teams that were, you know, fairly even in talent that could go one way or the other. And just when you looked at the big picture, it was like, okay, there's Western. Quebec, the same thing. In Eastern Canada, same thing. You knew who was going to win before the season started. And Saskatchewan got, you know, there were a couple of scares in there for them, but for the most part, you know, the team that we thought was going to come out of the conference did. As Gordy said, I'm just happy they're back playing again. The level of ball seems to be getting better and better, especially at the top half with those power programs that we have now. So, you know, from a youth sports perspective, that's where I want to go with that. NCAA was kind of an up and down season for me. I loved seeing the guys develop. You know, sort of we've started paying really close attention more and more to Matt Bergeron, as Syracuse had that great start early in the season. And then kind of, you know, they stubbed their toes at the midway point, but watching him progress, and then kind of the disappointments as well, the injury to work at the end of the season. We all expected more of Nick Mardner at Cincinnati, who can now either go to the transfer portal again, or maybe end up in the CFL. He's a guy who could be a first-round pick in that league. So it was a mixed bag for me in the NCAA, and I did see a lot more positives maybe in youth sports, but there's still that power thing that we've been dealing with for, I don't know, 1,000 years.
That's a wrap on Season 12 of Krown Gridiron Nation. Keep an eye out on YouTube at this address on the bottom, as we just might have some updates through the course of the off season. But for now, this is Jim Mullen saying, let's get out to the game.